All right. Welcome back to another podcast, the Beyond the Coach podcast specifically. I am one of your hosts, Kelsey Nanini.
And I'm Chris Sweet.
And right before we pressed play on this, record on this, Chris was like, can we just talk about Andy for 5 seconds? Because we are recording this on October 29th. And last night, I texted Chris immediately to talk about how Andy is still safe. And I teared up at his performance because he's just improving every single week.
It was also his birthday.
I
was
know,
like, how special.
You can't vote the man off on his birthday.
Listen, it's gotten to the point where Kenneth is just as invested, if not more invested actually than I am. Like, he is now fully on Andy. He doesn't care for anybody else, just knows the Andy.
Is he on Andy Talk? Because I'm on Andy Talk.
Yes. And I said that to Kenneth. I said, listen, Andy and Emma kill the marketing game. Like, they are pulling at America's heartstrings. I told Kelsey last night, this man could run for president at this point and America would vote for him.
He's bringing America together, truly.
He's really a unity, and he's just, he's bringing a lot of light and joy into our lives. And you know what? At first, when we first started the season, I was like, I'm not going to pay attention to this guy.
I thought he was going to be the first off.
Who was the guy last season? He started with an R.
It was the cop from are you talking about the cop from the Christmas movie that's not a Christmas movie, Die Hard? The cop, the black cop?
Yes. But what's his name?
I can't remember his. Please hold. Cop from Die Hard.
Starts with an R.
Reginald VelJohnson.
Reggie. Okay, listen, like Reggie last season, he pulled out my heartstrings. However, I was like, okay, he's going to go. So with Andy in the beginning of the season, he wasn't giving cutesy Reggie vibes in the beginning. I was like, okay, he's just kind of like, with Emma, whatever. But now I'm like sucked in to the point where I want to buy the t-shirts with his face on it. Like, I really want to just like go all in. I don't know if you saw my DM back to you in TikTok today.
Oh, I was going to ask if you saw the video.
Well, I did, and then my response to you was pitching you an idea for next Halloween. I said, next year, Halloween, you throw a party. We all show up as our favorite Andy.
Oh my God. I love that so much.
We all just show up as Andy, like from dances or from life or whatever. Like, you just show up as Andy.
It's funny because Andy was in Elf, and Kaden and I quote, you didn't know this? Elf? There was the two guys at the printing company, the publishing company, and he had the idea, he's like, what's more vulnerable than a peach? And we say that line all the time. We quote him, and then it's like, they're asparagus children. I don't remember which one's which, but I think he says, what's more vulnerable than a peach? And then his friend says, like, it's a tribe of asparagus children, and they're self-conscious about the way their pee smells.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, listen.
We quote him all the time.
Elf is already a very superior Christmas movie. It's gonna go off the charts now because of Andy. Everyone's gonna go.
People know he was in it. Like, I'm like, man.
I didn't. I had no idea till now.
Exactly. And Cincinnati, the Bengals are like all on him. Like, all for him. Their stuff's killing me.
Everyone's just doing the marketing for them at this point. Like, he has moved mountains. He has unified the NFL and pop culture together. Like, quite literally, he is making the same ripple effect that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce made. Like, he is just on.
True. He is, and I telling Kaden, I'm like, hear me out. The competition is so intense this season. Andy is the one that's improving every single week. And like, how do you choose between Whitney and Alex? Because truthfully, the dance-off last night, I feel like Alex should have won. I may be impartial because I love Alex.
No. I thought that Whitney and Mark were just like tweedle-toeing themselves around. And then you have Alex and Val. Yeah. Alex was being lifted in the air
multiple times.
I felt like I was sucked into a scene from Great Gatsby with Alex and Val.
I was so upset when they didn't win. I was shocked.
I do think that it was like truly a tie, and like Bruno just picked up the paddle. And if there's a TikTok going around of Derek's reaction when Bruno picked up the paddle and he looked upset, like it should have been Alex and Val.
I haven't seen that
yet. And I was like, I don't need him to confirm or deny. I'm just going to believe that they were better. Yeah. And it's just because it's Mark, like at the end of the day. So yes. respect Mark. I think he is a genius as far as his experience and being an athlete and a professional. However, I have officially become team Alex. Like I am like Alex to the end.
She's so
if it's not Alex, Robert. If it's not, like, those are my top two right now.
How do you choose between, because the 5 people that were left in the dance-off, I was like, oh, also when Andy got voted off first in the dance-off, I was like, great, he's gone. Damn it. Like, he's out. You know, this is his last week.
Isn't that the crazy part, though? Without even extra points. He got, like, 1 point from that. He's still what?
It's America. America loves Andy.
And the last...
I think he's going to win the whole thing. Because how do you choose?
Well, and I said this to Kenneth. I said, listen... I just want to know how many votes he really is at. Like, I want to see the numbers.
I do too.
They're intentionally putting him in the bottom, you know, and like having him be one of the last ones standing to like add the shock value, whatever. They put Winnie and Mark down there to add the shock value, whatever. But I'm like, how many votes is this man really? Like, we need to know the data. They need to release a study about this man once this episode or season's done. Like, I need a full, like, the stats in me is like, I need to see it. Also, I will add this. As more people get eliminated, I think they're going to hop on the Andy train because I think they're going to be
Why not?
They're definitely anti Whitney and Mark if they've been rooting for these other people. Like their team underdog.
I think Whitney and Mark truly didn't pull as many votes this week because of their stupid little thing with the giveaway.
Yeah.
I think they took more people away. I think that's why they're actually at the bottom. But I would love, Caden was actually saying that too. He's like, how much poll does America's votes actually have versus the...
Another study I think needs to be released on that.
Right. Release the stats. I want to see them. They do that for elections. Why can't we do it for Dancing with the Stars?
Transparency. That's all I'm asking for.
Give me the percentage. I just...
By the time this releases, Andy could be off. You know, he could. But I just feel that it's important for Kelsey and I to speak on Andy's behalf.
Yeah. And everyone has talked about it. It's like, he's doing what the show's made for. He is improving every week. Mm-hmm. His dance this week, like he was moving better than I've seen him move in a long time. Mm-hmm. This week and last week. And
also just his like personality towards it. He's so just genuinely happy to be there.
Like, he was so serious. Like he should have been in the specific, it was the something tango. Why can't I think of it? Argentine tango. And he was very I'm like, the man. Anyways, we had to talk about that. Chris was like, it'll just be a minute, but obviously we can't just talk about Andy for a minute. So it was like more like 7 minutes. But if you don't, I love that, man. Listen to it or you watch Dancing with the Stars, man, this season, I started watching last year because of Alona Mayer. But
I'm team Alex and Robert, but Andy's just like, he's like the celeb shot for me. You know, like he's just in there.
He's like America's sweet boy.
The last thing I will add. Alan standing up there by himself did make me cry last night.
He looks
like a little sad puppy dog up there, and I was like, I just want to give him a hug.
I love Alan too. Him and Alona last year, like I loved them together. Kaden and I were a bit upset. I'm not gonna lie. He's like, Kaden's like, this is kind of unfair to all the other dancers that he gets to stay. Given she did at least get to show a performance, and it was a good one.
Yep.
But he was like, he's like, athletes don't get a chance to compete. He's like,
well, I said to Kenneth though, I was like, it's smart that they have a rule book. Like, you know, Alfonso said, according to our rule book, like this is what happens in this scenario. And I was like, that's smart though to have. Like, I was like, I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't have been like, well, what happens when they're injured? You just think that they're out, but like they have an extra
I'm glad they did that. If they didn't show her dance at all and like just let her stay in, I was like, that's not fair. Yeah, like
if they were like, if they were like, hey, just vote for her if you want. Like, she still needs your votes, but didn't show anything. I'd be like, okay, now we're really like pity voting her in. But I think regardless, she deserved to stay. I'm not surprised that Jen and Jan are the ones that won. I just feel like they didn't really have a lot of chemistry together.
No,
but
she's been just kind of underwhelming.
It's going to start getting harder. Like the next bit of time is about to get really tough because like they are all people that I like. Yeah. I agree. They're all people that I like.
Yep.
That's the hard part. Moving on, we're going to talk about high level shit.
Sorry if you put up with that, but you can also fast forward to now.
Welcome. 9 minutes in, we're here. We made it. We're going to talk about high level shit. High level shit. Welcome. We are going to, at least right now, test something out with you guys where we're going to let you submit client cases to us that will literally like dedicate our podcast episode to, essentially. So we're going to make a form in the bio, show description, whatever, and you can submit it to us and we will talk it in live time. Because today we're going to go over like a scenario that did come up with one of our coaches, and we just want to kind of riff on what happens in these scenarios because we all get in a little bit of a pickle sometimes.
Yeah. And like Chris and I's whole goal with Apex Coach Collective, with Beyond the Cert, with all of our cohorts, is I think when you get a certification, you get your CPT, you get your nutrition cert, a lot of textbooks and certs make things seem so black and white. It's like, this is what's happening and this is why. And like, it's very black and white, right? Or you see people on Instagram, it's like, well, if you're not losing weight, you're just not in a caloric deficit. And like, sure, I absolutely do believe that that's the one way you do lose weight, other than if you have like a medical issue and like you're just rapidly losing weight, right? There's so much gray area to coaching that I think is not normalized enough. It's just like, well, this is happening. And it's like, but what about this, and this? And that's why when Chris, like people have come to me with questions about clients, I'm like, okay, well, I have like 16 other questions for you, because sure, we can know their BMR, their TDEE, their activity level, their goals, their macros, whatever is set. But like, if these are the things and they're not seeing X goal happen, like, whoa, okay, what else is going on behind the scenes? Because there is so much more at play that oftentimes we can miss. And it doesn't mean you're a bad coach, or it doesn't mean that you're whatever, this, that, or the other. But there's things that you miss as a coach, and that's what we're kind of here to fill that gap with and support with.
And I think this is a gap too that a lot of coaches who don't have a team experience as well. Like, something I love is that even Kelsey and I like text about client scenarios. Like, if I'm like, hey, I'm really stuck on this one, like, what do you think I should do? And vice versa. Or like our assistant coaches coming to us and asking questions. Like, if any coach is like, I know it all, I'm like, no, you don't. And if you think you do, then like you're probably not expanding on your education. You're probably not dealing with like high level stuff sometimes, or you get stuck in your comfort zone of what you do or don't teach. And there's just literally no shame in asking for help. There's no dumb questions. What I want to do is really like lift up the veil to what real coaching looks like. And real coaching is having a team. Like, it's having a community around you where you get to expand and learn. And the best coaches in the industry are going to be the ones who lean into that. And the coaches who drop off at the end of the day are going to be the ones that didn't, the ones that shied away from asking the question. So this is like, if any of you needed a little kick in the butt today, it's show up, come forward. Like, I'm just calling you out because I was certainly one of the people who was shying away from it in the beginning. And now I embrace it, and I challenge myself to this day to just ask questions. So highly recommend. But yeah, kind of getting into it. I'll set the scene for us, essentially.
I was just pulling up the screenshots that you had sent. So yeah, go ahead. And
I will be doing this from memory. So Kelsey, feel free to put more context in, but I'm just going to really try my best here. Client comes in, client signed up with you. Client had previously gone through a fat loss phase, losing 50 pounds. They come in and you put them into maintenance, right? So they're coming in at a decent spot. They've already been quote unquote at maintenance when they come in. And you spend 3 months at this tentative maintenance amount, essentially. 3 months in, this individual still has weight that they want to lose. So you decide to put them into a fat loss phase. For the first month of the fat loss phase, they've lost a few pounds. After that first month of the phase, essentially, you start to notice that things are stalling out. You're starting to notice that weight is actually coming on, despite biofeedback being in a good place. Some outliers that do exist is that high stress has been something that the individual is dealing with. And you also note that the individual is dealing at or working at essentially 70, 80% compliance and adherence. Because of the frustrations, obviously, with a client, like not seeing the results, you decide to pull them out and put them into a diet break. I believe for a month, right? Diet break for a month.
Yes, it was 4-week diet break.
Yeah, 4-week diet break. Things still stay the same though. Like, they stay the same. Things are not trending in one direction or the other. You drop them back down into a deficit, and again, nothing's happening. And actually, the client is gaining weight over time, despite all these efforts to help them lose weight. So essentially, it's like, what do you do in this scenario? as a coach, you obviously have frustration. And this is also the perfect place where it's like, yes, there's the science, there's a textbook that tells you, oh, if you eat less than what you're burning in a day, you should lose weight. Yes, but there's always going to be outliers. And this is why it goes so much deeper when you're working on a human level. So, Kelsey, I will have you just kind of kick it off, coaching hat on. What stands out to you?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. One, if you know anything about me, you know that I am a huge proponent of like maintenance forever and ever and ever and ever and all times. Obviously, there's a time and place to be in a deficit, 1000%. The first thing that kind of stood out to me, and this is a tough part about being a coach, right, is like you have a client who wants to lose weight for an event and they come to you and you're like, cool, we're going to go to maintenance first. And they, you know, maybe give pushback and they're like, well, I want to be in a deficit now. This actually just recently happened to one of our coaches and her client. And we had to have the tough conversation with her of like, hey, like, you know, your client isn't even at maintenance yet. Like she's just been in a deficit still, even though she's in a reverse. She's struggling to eat more. And so then she wants to jump back into another deficit. And so your body hasn't had a break. And so when we think about like, I like to think of stress, think of it as like a bucket. All your clients have this bucket and it's a bucket of stress. There's usually, hopefully, like 1 or 2 hoses in there at once. One of the hoses being training stress, because that does play a factor. And then there's life stressors that come up that the body is usually apt to deal with. But that's the asterisk. Like the body's usually adapt to deal with this. You put into it dieting for a long period of time. Losing 50 pounds is an incredible feat. It's also stress on your body because the body getting less food that it's intended to receive, aka maintenance, it's stress. And so that's a big piece of it too, is it's stress to be in that deficit. She's also has outward stress that's going on. Training stress, all that. She mentioned the biofeedback was pretty good, mentioned sleep was good and energy was high, hunger was low, recovery is good. I like to like inch into that more. How good is sleep? And what does good mean? Like, is she getting 7 to 9 hours? Is she getting into deep sleep? Because deep sleep is where muscle recovery happens. Is she getting in REM sleep? Enough REM sleep? Like, what does good mean? Is it consistent sleep in a sense that she's in a circadian rhythm of like going to sleep within the same hour and waking up within the same hour every day? Bodies crave cycles. And so those are the initial things that I think about when especially you're like in this deficit and nothing's happening. The other piece of it to consider is she mentioned that she like just wasn't super adherent. Like it was like 70 to 80% adherence. And when I look at that, I'm like, okay, but what does that other 20 to 30% look like? Like if she's adherent, 70 to 80% of the time, what is non-adherent? Is it completely going off the rails? Like, what does that look like? And so those are my initial, like, what's happening. I was trying to get because her current, it sounds like she's currently, so what she had put, when she came in, yeah, so she's up like 16 pounds basically from when she came in. I was trying to get an idea of what her actual maintenance is, but those are my initial thoughts, and obviously we'll dive deeper into it, but would love to know like kind of your stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that we don't realize the impact of stress. Like, yep. Even I can use myself as an example. I notice such a difference in my body physically, in my weight, in my eating patterns, in my cognition, like all the things at once when I am in a like high stress state. I notice that, hey, I put on like 5 pounds when I'm super, super stressed because I'm not sleeping as well. I'm not eating as well. I'm not drinking as much water. I'm very distracted. I'm probably not moving as much. Like there's a lot of different elements that people don't even realize happen because they're so used to falling into that pattern. So I think it's like, hey, well, what's happened when you're stressed, right? When you're stressed, does that 70, 80% actually dip down? And how long has that dipped down to like maybe even 50% effort and adherence? And to your point with sleep, like sleep is, if you're looking at like a food pyramid, sleep is literally the most important, right? And I use a food pyramid because all of us were taught that, or at least I was taught that when I was in school. That was like the only nutrition education that we were ever given, period. But if you're thinking of that and you're thinking of the hierarchy, it's like, hey, sleep's like really, really, really important. I don't think people give that like enough credit to what the foundation of your recovery is, what the foundation of your metabolic health is, your GI health, digestion. Like, so much happens when you're sleeping. And I really like your point of like, well, what is good? You know, what is good considered for this individual? Where did they come in? Has this shifted for them? Do we need to actually refine that? And that was something I told this coach in particular, was like, you know, I think we really need to look at what are the gaps for this person, right? Like, not only say, okay, yeah, it's good on all these marks, but where could it be better, and make it the best possible that we can for this client, essentially. So I agree with all of your points. And another thing too is like training intensity. Like, what are they doing? You know, sure, they're averaging 10K steps, but like, is that fluctuating day to day? Or like, what does the routine look like and the baseline look like for this person?
Yeah. Looking at the numbers, so just with like the data that I have available, and obviously it sounds like she was like doing not a lot of cardio, but it sounds like she added some cardio in. She's hitting 10K steps. I don't know if I saw anything about lifting in here. She's like in the maintenance building process. And initially the deficit was going pretty well. But yeah, I couldn't see anything. So I assume she's like moderately active. And so when I'm calculating that out, it's like her BMR is like 1,584 calories. Lowest she got was 1,615, it sounds like, which is not bad. Like, that's a good amount. Carbs were fairly getting lower and lower. Maybe her body responds better to fats versus carbs, and we need to switch that around to where she's able to get in, you know, more carbohydrates versus more fats. And then the other piece of it being her maintenance. So when I calculated it, again, there could be some downregulation because she was dieting for so long, but it was at like 2,376 calories. So when we're looking at this, it's like there's no real way to know a person's true maintenance unless we're like scientifically going in and like testing the body, right? But with that being said, it's like there's a physiological component of like the amount of food somebody's getting and how their body responds to it. There's also the psychological component of like, is their food so low that they're just not staying consistent? And I can speak from personal experience. I've had deficits where like I got so low in food that I was like, I'm just not going to be honest with my coach because I'm starving, and I'm kind of embarrassed, honestly, to even admit this, like, or admit to her that I'm not being consistent, because it's like, I just don't have energy and I'm just like really dying at this point. And, that I got to that point in 2022 after my knee surgery. And eventually I did talk to my coach about it, where I was just like, hey, like, I'm just really like, I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't think weight loss is even important to me anymore. Like, I just want to eat food and like train hard, and at least I can understand that. But from a client standpoint, they don't think about all the other things that go into them having those small bites from their kids' plate, or having like a handful of something as they're walking past the pantry. And like, those aren't things that they're tracking in MyFitnessPal. So they're like, I'm being consistent. And that's where I come from a standpoint of, and it's really hard to have that conversation with a client of like, hey, are you being honest? And that's a really, because you don't want to play the blame game. But the way I like to approach it is typically like, okay, like, hey, I hear you're frustrated. Like, I hear that we've been in this deficit and you're gaining weight, and that can be super, super frustrating, right? But when we're like really breaking things down, like, how bought in do you feel like you've been to this? Like, even bringing up when she was struggling in the past, I mean, like, hey, like, this is what your calorie amount looked like when, you know, we thought you were being consistent, but in reality, this is what was happening. So like, what does that look like for you now? And I've had to do that with a client where I pulled up her, MyFitnessPal diary from the past 35 days. Like, I went through a ton of data and I put it into a table, and I show this to a lot of coaches, when they're having clients struggle with consistency, and like how to even approach that with a client, because it's tough. And I had actually had the conversation with her before of like, hey, are you being fully honest? And she didn't take it well. And so then I had to pull up the data. I was like, hey, like, I put up the past 35 days, 8 of the last 35 days, which isn't like, doesn't seem like a lot. That's 22% of the last 35 days. I was like, 8 of these last 35 days, you haven't tracked a single thing. There's also days, there was like, I think 15 total days where there was either like no tracking at all, some tracking, or macros weren't hit. And I was like, 15 of the last 35 days, that's almost 50% of the time, you have not been consistent. And that as a coach is super hard. But before we go and blame, which I'm not saying this can't be the case, hormones, metabolism, all that, before we go and blame that, before we dive into like the high, deeply like rooted things, let's just talk about consistency for a second and actually dive into like, hey, are you fully being honest with yourself with this data? Are you being honest with me? And there's no problem if you aren't, but we just need to dive into that. And when she saw that graph, after I showed that client that graph, she ended up losing like 60 total pounds with me. But after she saw that was when she really turned a corner of like, holy shit, like I'm not actually doing what I think I am. And it kind of turned something on for her of like, if I want to lose weight, like I have to actually just be super focused. And that like, that was a big thing too.
Yeah. And I think to your point on that as well, it's like meals out, like, you know, you can estimate a meal out, but like meals out end up having a lot more calories and stuff in there that we are not typically eating day to day. I always tell my clients, I'm like, I'd rather you overestimate than underestimate a meal out, because a lot of times like it's going to be over than under. And so I've even done this with clients where it's like number of literal meals out they've had in a week, where I'm like, hey, out of the last, you know, what, there's 7 days in a week, it's like, hey, you averaged about like 2.5 meals out a day. Like there are some people who just eat out a lot, or like for lunch decide to pick up like even something like Sweetgreen, right? They're still just picking something up that's like out and about. They didn't cook it themselves. They don't know the full serving sizes. Like Sweetgreen's not over there like taking a food scale and making sure it's 4 ounces of chicken exactly. Like they're not doing that. So number of meals out, and also number of alcoholic beverages as well, because a lot of people don't track alcohol at all, let alone correctly when they do it. Yeah. So those are even outliers that stand out to me with a client who's maybe dealing with some weight loss resistance or experiencing weight gain when they should be seeing weight loss. But there's so many lenses to look at. I just think it's like going that extra depth, that even if you think you've gone deep, it's like, well, let me go deeper and really figure this out and then create a better game plan for them.
Yep. And as I'm looking at this more, I'm like, every time I'm like, I like find other like little niblets, because there is a lot to this. There's a lot of nuance. And one thing she had mentioned, obviously she had been with another coach losing 50 pounds. So I'm like, okay, well, how long ago was that? Because we didn't get that context. And how low did she go? Because more than likely,
how long was she in that?
How long was she in it?
Deficit.
Metabolic downregulation can happen. She mentioned coming into her eating 1,900 calories, which really isn't low. Like, that's awesome. That's great. But she said that she mentioned wanting to build muscle. So we increased to maintenance. And then that was only for 3 months. And if someone wants to build muscle, and like, she mentioned like going into a cut for a wedding, like that's where I'd have the card conversation with the client of like, hey, here's the thing, dude, you just lost 50 pounds. That's freaking insane. Like I encourage you to just go pick up a 50-pound weight at the gym and actually feel how heavy that is, because that's amazing. Is right now the true importance for you to lose weight for this wedding, this one event? What is the difference between you feeling really good in your body right now and maintaining the results you just achieved in this deficit, and looking good for this one event where, like, not to be insensitive, but like you're not the main event, like you're not the bride, right? And like, you know, that's like me being kind of a dick, but at some point we have to have those hard conversations as coaches. And so I would suggest, because it sounds like even in maintenance she was gaining, like she gained like 8 pounds. I would also question habits during maintenance, like how, not strict, but like how consistent was she, and talking through that, but also remembering like maintenance and muscle building too, like you're gonna gain some weight, and sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes your body actually needs that. You're adding more carbs, that carries more water, but also just building in general. So I think it's also just the mental aspect, like the psychological component, back to that of having a conversation with a client where it's like, hey, you know, you did want to build muscle. Let me take, like what you said, 3 months is not enough time to build muscle. A full year, yes. And I promise you, when you do that for a full year, you are going to be in such a more optimal spot to cut and actually probably look the way you want to in a deficit as well. So I would just really consider with this client kind of just steadily gaining back weight, even with trying a deficit. 1, the deficit happened too soon. 2, like her body wasn't ready for it. It happened too soon. But two, like she actually just genuinely needed time away and time to build, and also time to just be okay with maybe some weight gain. But yeah, I don't know if you want to dive into like the stress piece of it too, because that's obviously the lingering part we haven't dove more into as well.
Yeah, the last thing I'll add to, just as far as like measurements go, one thing I wanted to add to what you were saying was like even trying to change up the way you're tracking progress with a client, like especially if you're noticing the scales trending up, I'd be like, hey, can we look at like body measurements? Like I want to know, because sometimes photos, especially depending on like someone's body composition, you might not even see it in photos to understand like where is this weight even going. It would be helpful for me to know like where did this weight come, where did it go essentially? Like where is it being grown? So looking at something even beyond the scale, or if your client is really struggling, and this kind of goes into the psychology, but if your client is kind of struggling with the scale while at maintenance, it's sometimes where I'm just like, hey, let's remove the scale, because I don't want that to dictate our decisions that like we're making for our body in a singular day. I want to just focus on like the habits and the patterns and the things you need to like double down on. And then when that time comes to go into a cut, we know that we've solidified what needs to be done in a really effective way that makes, to your point, the fat loss easier. And then maybe they're in a better place to like look at the scale and understand the scale and use it as a data point at that point, essentially. So I just wanted to add that in there. But stress is a big one. Also, you know, when you talk about stress, I'm thinking of like how cortisol has really like the topic of cortisol has really been trending on social media. Like everyone's
cortisol
like
face,
cortisol face, and this and then this. Listen, Linda. Do I think that stress makes an impact? Absolutely. I like 100%. Do I think we're maybe capitalizing on it like a little too much as a society? Yes. I mean, you literally have Botox, like nurse injectors now, like capitalizing on GLP-1 face, because like GLP-1s have made people lose all face definition. Like you just look at how people capitalize on like this one thing and it like goes so much deeper. That's a whole different like topic, whatever. But this does pertain to stress, where I think people get like a little too hung up in like the whole cortisol effect and all of this stuff. But I think we forget to look at the human piece of it, of like stress alone. I'm not going to put a title on it. I'm not going to say cortisol is making you inflamed. I'm not going to say that. I just want to understand your life. Like I want to understand when this stress comes up, how do your habits change? And something I love about what we do is we have a biofeedback tracker for clients. So I love to see the patterns of behavior between like, okay, if a client rated their stress a 7, 8, 9, 10, you know, a few days, but then maybe it was a 1, 2, 3 other days, how does that difference, you know, as far as their patterns of behavior, their mindset, like their check-in, right? If they check in on a day where they're a 10 out of 10, what does their check-in look like versus on a day where they're like 1 out of 10 when it comes to stress? And I think to what you did of like pulling all this data for clients, that can really unveil what stress does to someone from a pattern of behavior perspective. You can be hitting your macros while stressed, but guess what? Your quality of food sucks. Like you could be leaning into the drive-through food and meals out and alcohol and not drinking as much water. That stuff is going to have an inflammatory effect on top of the stress. I know for me, my anxiety hits me really bad at night. And if my anxiety is really intense at night, I do wake up the next morning feeling inflamed and puffy. Like my anxiety, like my stress sits in my lower gut. Like it just does. I'm on a GI protocol for a reason, to like start healing the damage that I have done. But that's the point, is it causes damage. Like it does cause damage over time. And you either get to do something about it early on, or, you know, later on it unveils and you have to work on it yourself. So I think things go really deep when it comes to stress. People are so focused also on macros and fitness. This is always my biggest gripe with like the world of social media and the fitness world, and what some trainers lean on is like they're so focused on like life or death, hit your macros, hit your workouts, but they don't act that way towards a client's stress management tactics. Like, how are you taking care of yourself outside of workouts? Because workouts are a sense of self-care, but if you're neglecting yourself when you're at home and the workouts are just now an escape for you to avoid the shit that you need to do at home or the life you have at home, that's where things need to get deeper. I mean, that's like me also being married to a mental health counselor, where like that just like I can project that so hard. But I just think that every coach has a recipe book. How many coaches have a stress management tactic book where it shows them all the options that a client can have when it comes to stress management? Stress management also isn't you sitting and vegging on your couch. Can it be a disconnect? Absolutely, as far as that. But like, how about you go and you journal, or you meditate, or you go to even a restorative yoga class, or you allow yourself to go on a walk with no screens in front of you at all, not even AirPods on. I always say, like, I think I've said this on cohorts before. When I walk outside and I have my AirPods in, I'm actually not listening to anything. Like, a lot of the times I just want silence because like your whole day is just noise. My walks are the one time where like there's genuinely no noise, but like nature around me, dogs barking, kids laughing, playing around, whatever. Like, I love the mindfulness that brings me. That is not something that coaches are putting into protocols. And I think it is something that needs to be just as important as macros and as hitting your workouts. I digress.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the stress talk is such an interesting thing. Like, the body, like I've mentioned, is designed to manage stress. It's a really cool thing, but it's not designed to manage the chronic levels of stress that now occur in today's society. And stress levels just have gone up because we have everything at our fingertips, quite literally everything. There's something to be said about out of sight, out of mind. And now you can just go on the internet and get fired up about whatever. But then you also have the aspect of like, you're spending time on your phone, which means you're spending less time doing the things you need to do, and you're putting them off. And now you're stressed because you put them off because you were on your phone. So I think that there's just like so much more of a compounding effect of stress levels at this point, and how we like can cope with them. And your phone, sitting and scrolling on your phone is not a stress management technique, because to your point, like, you're still stimulated.
Yeah, my therapist said it best, actually, like, just with like political climate, all of that, even just terrible shit in the world that you see every day. We are not built as humans to digest that type of information. We are not built to go on TikTok and see traumatic videos of anything happening in the world. My trigger warning, I'm going to talk about the plane crash that happened in DC. My anxiety like skyrocketed. And I remember going into therapy and being like, I just have this like pit in my stomach of anxiety. And she was like, well, have you been on social media? And I'm like, well, yeah, like my job's on social media, whatever, I'm scrolling. She's like, but think about it this way. All you're seeing is tragedy. You're seeing tragedy, and you're seeing the worst case scenario of the world. How often are you seeing the best case scenario? Never. Like, when that kind of stuff. And you watch one of those videos and now 12 of your videos pop up of that exact thing in a row. Our brains, to your point, are not meant to process that level of stress or that scenario to even have to pop in our head. I mean, like 9/11 was a big one for people, where that was the first big like social media blow up of like this huge intense thing happening. And like, I don't want to get into all of that, but it's just like, it just goes to show how deep stress can be for someone. And so for your clients, like in the case with this client who is dealing with stress, I would want to know, how is she handling that stress? And if she's like, oh, I'm good, but what is good, right? To your point, it's like asking the deeper questions. We just sometimes take it at face value of a client that we don't dig deeper. And that stress could be chronic stress over years and years and years now for her, potentially, that has caused some sort of dysfunction in the body, right? Like for me, it's been stress that has definitely fed into GI problems that I have now that I'm like uncovering and unveiling and working on. And I think there's just so many different ways, and it's a very like loaded package of things that you can be looking at. But at the end of the day, I think a client in this scenario needs maintenance for longer. Like if it's just not working, it's not working. Leave them be at maintenance. Even if it's slightly below that 2,200, 2,300, like to your point, I think people look a little too much into the numbers and they think it's black and white. I always, when I'm doing a nutrition assessment with a client, I always tell them, this is a threshold. Like this is just us looking at a threshold range. I'm not looking at this as like, oh, if you eat like 2,201 calories, you're going to start gaining weight because your BMR or your TDE is at 2,200. That's not what it is. And so I think with this client in particular, this is the case where it's like, bring her even right below her TDE, bring her to 1,900, bring her to something where it's just a little bit higher than the 1,600 range. Start focusing on the lifestyle factors, start doubling down, looking at her food logs, looking at quality of food, how she's tracking alcohol, how she's tracking meals out, how she's processing stress. Is she in therapy? Is she working on this stuff? If it is something that's more intense, and just see how that goes after 3 months, after 6 months. And just tell the client that like, this is going to move towards the goal that you have. We're moving towards the point where like, there's no avoiding this. You can go work with another coach and they're going to put you in a deficit and the same thing's going to happen. So how do we work on this now and like stop the spiral that you're in, literally? So that is like my thoughts in a nutshell of stress and how deep it can go. And then, you know, with a client like this, where I would start with them. And maybe even again, taking some of the pressure off of like stepping on the scale and like focusing on something else and just using wins in a different direction of less scale, more life, more stress management, all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's, to your point, it's like taking things slowly. There's no problem with slowly titrating calories up and figuring out where that sweet spot is for a client, because that's true maintenance, is being able to manually determine where it's at. And also just the element of like, hey, let's get consistent here and let's just see how your body responds after a few weeks. And that's where, like, I think that's the true nature of coaching comes in, where it's not just like, okay, I did a calculation for you. You're all good to go. It's like, no, let's make a change. 5 grams of fat at a time, 10 grams of carbs at a time. Let's just see what happens. And so I think that's just the biggest thing we want to take home with this case study specifically, because sometimes there is like a black and white element. There's a lot of gray area. As you saw, like pretty much this entire 30 minutes we've been diving into this is a gray area.
And I think anyone who gives you a straightforward answer isn't looking at all the elements, or is just looking to give you an answer. Like, I think that it is something where there's just so many give and takes you can have with it. And it's a matter of titrating, trying. It is a trial and error, and that sucks, but like that's working with health, and that's working with bodies, and that's working with people who are very intricate.
And that's also something you can tell this client too. If she's like, well, you know, my other coach has done this. And I always like to say, like, yeah, awesome. But like, how has that been working right now? Like, that was past you. You obviously saw a huge weight loss. That same strategy is no longer going to work. And that's like the biggest nuance to coaching, is like one thing that worked for one person isn't going to work for the other, but it's same is true for like one thing that worked for a person in the past is not going to continue to work for them. And so just explaining to her like, hey, like you can either continue to go down the path we've been going down of like a deficit and it not working and you feeling super frustrated, or we can essentially let this serve as a reset to your body, get it back to like even, just get it back to a good baseline, and we can grow from here. And so I think that obviously there's no solid answer that we gave you on this podcast. And I think the answer is like, there's literally a web of different things that you have to investigate. And the good coaches, the coaches who do end up getting their clients results, a lot of the coaches that have been in our cohorts and ACA and all that, they are investigating on such a deeper level than just like, well, you're hitting your macros, you're doing your workouts, like biofeedback looks good, just keep pushing, right? And I don't think that's what this coach did at all. Obviously, she came to us with the case study, and I know she's like an incredible coach, but it's a tough
amazing
case,
coach.
right? Yeah, amazing coach. But there are coaches out there who will just look at the black and white of like, well, and I've heard it time and time again with clients. It's like, oh, well, I looked at all this stuff. It's like, looks good. Just keep pushing. And I'm like, I want to bang my head against a hard rock, because like, why is that the answer? And so the goal of this podcast is like, hey, there's so many other things that we have to investigate when a client is struggling. And hopefully this kind of gave some more insight, because I know this is a very common, very, very common thing that we see within coaching. So
yeah, 100%. But if you guys want more support on client specific stuff, fastest, easiest way is going to be joining our Coach Collective WhatsApp group. So we'll have that link always in the show notes for you guys to join and get in there. Like I said, don't be shy. Don't stray away from asking questions. What's going to separate the successful coaches versus the ones that drop off is the ones who ask the questions, like always. And so come in there, ask questions, submit a form to us if you have a client scenario you want us to review live on this podcast. We will always keep things private, by the way. We'll never say your name. We'll never say the client's name. We'll never give away personal information like that on this podcast. It's meant to be educational. And so just know that that is safe with us. And yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. We're excited to bring more of this in the future, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.